Hey guys, it's Matt. Welcome back to A Voice in the Night, which is similar to the old-fashioned radio show, but a little bit more serious. No ridiculous ads, sponsors, Marco Rubio bubble parties, things like that. Like the last Voice in the Night, and actually many of my weekend videos load around noon or 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and I predict there'll be somebody this time, just like last time, that can't quite reconcile the title with the load time and think their entire world revolves around their time zone. Matt, why are you calling it A Voice in the Night? I'm in St. Louis, man. It's only 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. out here. They can't comprehend there's a rest of the world out there that may be pulling this video up shortly after loading when it actually is nighttime. You see, people from the East Coast, especially New Yorkers, the whole world revolves around New York. If you talk to a New Yorker, New York City, and certain parts of Manhattan, I'm not certainly classifying the entire state, there's a world of difference, I assure you, between getting out towards Buffalo and people that live in like Greenwich Village, New York, a world of difference. It's basically like separate alien planets. But some people in New York, they can't even comprehend their other time zones. It's concentric rings, the reality. The entire world, of course, how every single TV show is structured, when things air, when sporting events air, New York first, then the United States second in the second ring, and then the rest of the world. Here's a great example. The U.S. Open tennis tournament, the major tournament, end of August into early September, Flushing Meadows, Corona Park, New York. It is. Flushing Meadows, Corona Park, New York. Now, the greatest matches are the night matches at that tennis tournament. Serena Williams at 7 o'clock or Nadal at 9 o'clock, all at 7 o'clock, all at 9 o'clock. The point is, I assure you, not one New Yorker in the history of that tournament has ever thought about how inconvenient that is for somebody from Ireland trying to watch their favorite tennis star play live. These motherfuckers overseas have to wake up 4 or 5 in the morning to see the tennis matches. They don't give a... The world revolves around New York, then the United States. Oh, the West Coast, they see it a little earlier. They don't care. But these mo-effers overseas, it's at 3 in the morning, 7 in the morning when these tennis tournaments are airing. They don't give a shit about the rest of the world. I think about this every time I watch it, like how it's getting late for me, and it's actually set up for my time zone. I'm outside Philadelphia, but the poor saps around the rest of the world, they just don't give a shit. The world revolves around New York City. If you went to the tournament organizer and said, this is a little difficult for people all throughout Europe, they, who? What? Who? There's, those people. Fuck them. Even Wimbledon. It's like pushed back into the late afternoon. In the United States, they call it breakfast at Wimbledon because the U.S. has to see it East Coast time. And the Australians, forget the Australians. To a New Yorker, that is a forgotten planet, man. That's a planet on the other side of the Oort cloud. To a New Yorker, you can say it's Monday here in New York. Stop somebody on the street on the Avenue of the Americas. What day of the week? It's Monday here. What day of the week is it now in Australia? They're like, Friday? They have no idea, and they don't give a shit either. All right, time to introduce a new truth term. I'm calling Twitter box truth. I introduce a lot of terms. Half of them stick. Half of them go by the wayside down the Pope's abyss. Twitter box truth. Now, the original Twitter box was only 140 characters. It cut you off. I don't use Twitter. I had to do a little research. I had no friggin' idea. It went to 280. It doubled the amount of characters allowed, which is 40 to 70 words. The new Twitter box, 280. But go back to the original, just 140 characters. Twitter box truth. If it cannot be explained inside of the original Twitter box, then it's not truth. I think this is like an axiom that is almost never violated. As you research something, whether you watch a YouTube video or channel, and as it gets more and more complicated, it's like an axiom. It takes you away from truth. The truths of this world, who we are, how things work, everything can be explained inside of the original Twitter box per this axiom, Twitter box truth, or it's false. So again, let's evoke the late physicist Richard Feynman, who famously said to the world, if it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. We can adapt his nonsense and apply that to Twitter box truth. If it disagrees with Twitter box truth, it's wrong. which means if it cannot be explained simply inside of 140 characters, for the most part, it's wrong. And the more Twitterbox characters that would be needed to explain it, the farther it takes it away from core truth. Now, I'll look at your comments. Is there anything that violates this? I don't think so. Even at the specific level, it may, but are you backing up far enough and looking down from your hot air balloon to see what it truly is? So somebody might be saying, well, Matt, explaining these alien abductions or what happened in all the John Keel books, that doesn't fit in. You can't do that in 140 characters. You can if you back up far enough and see, even as John Keel started to move towards, as he went forward in his research, that it's all part of the general reality trick. If you're in the weeds on something, of course you can't explain it in 140 characters. The reality has you right where it wants you, in the weeds. As you back up, well, Matt, by that rationale, you're going to be able to back up to anything and call it a reality trick, and you only need about 10 characters for that. Basically, that's what I'm saying, but not really. Okay, for example, there's a lot of ways to apply Twitter box truth. Look at what the astrophysicists do, or the cosmologists, or whatever they're called in their dumb titles in their dumb universities. Look what they do with the complicated math and the calculus, or whatever they do with their Transor Z formulas. I don't even understand it, but they use it as a barrier to entry before you can get involved in the conversation, before you can figure out the cosmos. Were you a math major and do you have a math PhD? Can you do the complicated calculus? You're like, no, I can't do the complicated calculus, but nevertheless, I want a seat at this table. You can't do the math, man. You don't get a seat at this table unless you can do the math. The math is there to make an understanding of the universe artificially complicated. That's easy to see when you back up far enough. Ultimately, the titles and the degrees in this area are the real barriers to entry. If you want to be able to sit down with a recycled ghost hologram of Stephen Hawking and have a conversation about how the universe works and what's on the other side of the fart cloud, you need the degrees, minimum PhD from Cambridge or Oxford or MIT, or maybe you could even be a PhD candidate like DiBiase and the character that plays herself, Jennifer Lawrence, in Don't Look Up. But you need something like that to get in. And see, another barrier to entry, to get that degree, you need to be able to do the math. So I'm going to go through the program and say, wait a second, I want that degree. I deserve a seat at that table in terms of the big thinking as to how this universe and cosmos works. But you didn't pass your math tests. In fact, you didn't get one goddamn answer right. You didn't even understand any part of the Optimus Prime math that we say you have to do in order to have a seat at this table. When you back up far enough from it and look down at it, it's simply barriers to entry to keep real people from having a seat at the table. Those that have the seat at the table go and achieve the barriers to entry. They take the math tests, they get the PhD, they're able to do everything that the Not-Nilk system says they must do in order to talk about these important things or pass their knowledge base on to the masses. But then by the time they come out of that program, they are simply minions of what the Not-Nilk wants, which is to complicate the entire reality with a gigantic trick and deception to hide real people from themselves. It all, once again, narrows down to 2 sentences. And Matt, how the heck do you keep a YouTube channel going when all of reality is 2 sentences? It is not easy, my friend. That's why we do ridiculous horse shit like what we did yesterday. So right now there's, say, somebody stumbling upon this video listening in Edmonton. That's in Canada. It's an entire city that still revolves its entire existence around Wayne Gretzky. And it's even colder there, folks, if you've never been, than Calgary, if you can believe that. Where did Wayne Gretzky go? The moment he could get his ass out of there, he went to Los Angeles. He said, give me some sun. How the heck could I have lived there for so long? Well, Matt, he returned. Sorry. See, they want to revolve themselves still around the legacy of Wayne Gretzky. Come on, Edmonton. You can produce something else in the next 100 years, can't you? Sorry. Now, the guy listening from Edmonton is saying, well, honey, you got to come in and listen to this son of a bitch. He's saying that in order to have a seat with the top minds on a certain subject, like what the universe is, or an astrophysicist or a cosmologist and the things we're talking about here, the society sets up a series of hurdles that only the smartest minds will be able to clear, like a high jump hurdler. be able to do the math, be able to take the test, be able to get the master's thesis approved or the doctorate thesis. Remember John Nash? He says, John, you still don't have your one original idea, and he just ran around after the pigeons trying to do a math equations out of the way the pigeons ate pieces of popcorn. And then eventually he didn't go to one damn class. Then he got this doctoral thesis with his one original idea, which we talked about in the past, showed the entire world corporate system how to collude with each other. We'll talk about that some other time. See, then you've cleared the hurdles. They've pinned the awards on your chest. But according to, honey, listen to this guy, according to this son of a beach, he's saying all that is it's an artificial zombie wash and rinse cycle. So when you come out of all of that, you're simply singing the tune. This guy's saying the not milk it's some sort of name for the reality itself that operates as a collective. When you come out and you've cleared all the hurdles and you've done all the master's thesis and you can do all the math and you've massaged Stephen Hawking when he was still alive, then you are set up to propagate the deception and the lie of what the not milk system wants. Yes, person from Edmonton, that's exactly what I'm saying. You son of a beach. Quick personal story, 2 minutes or less. We're talking about Edmonton. I had to fly 16 or 17 years ago for my job to Calgary in the winter, and I was terrified. I'm like, if it's negative 20 degrees, I'm not going. I'm just not going to go. But people from Calgary will tell you, in the winter, they can get these winds where it can be negative 35 degrees on Monday, and then by Friday it can warm up to like 30 degrees. And it was one of these warm shifts where like 2 weeks before it was negative 25, and I wouldn't have gone. But I'm flying up there. I looked at the weather. I'm like, wow, a high of 28. Isn't that wonderful? I guess I'll go. So I'm flying up. The guy next to me is from Calgary. I'm like, how long you been here? He's my whole life. Tell me about like the worst day you remember in the bitter cold. And so he tells me this story. It was something, I don't know if he said negative 35, negative 40, negative 45, whatever. He'd been there for decades. He says there's a tunnel system in the city. Like you can actually go underground to certain places where you don't have to be in that sort of weather. But he had to go outside and walk a block or two for whatever reason. And it was like negative 40 degrees. And he said, when you get that wind, the wind whipping around the corner and your eyes start to tear, he said, my eyelids immediately froze shut. My eyes froze shut. So he's stumbling around in negative 40 degrees like a blind man. He said he found like a restaurant or something, or he had somebody say, direct me to indoors. And he went inside, and over 5 minutes, he warmed up his eyelids so they separated from his eye. And I said, what the heck? You still live there? He said, yeah, I still live here. So I'm there overnight, just one night, basically a day and a half to 2 days. And they had this warm spell, again, at like 28 degrees. It was negative 30 degrees 2 weeks before. And people are literally walking around outside with short sleeve shirts on, just jeans and short sleeve shirts. It's 28 degrees and high winds. But see, the people from that part of Canada will tell you, if you go a week at negative 25 degrees, or 10 days, and then it warms up to 30 or just around freezing, it feels like Miami Beach. And they're roaming around outside with these little jackets or nothing on. And it was almost like it was like May to them. Calgary can do that. It can have these warm winds that come in, I hear, and break the vicious cold a few times. But I'm no expert, and I don't plan to go back. So just to wrap up this section on Twitter Box Truth before moving on, we can use the original slogan from Richard Feynman, famously coined about experiment. We can apply that to Twitter Box Truth if you believe the axiom holds, or it would be very rarely broken. I'll look to your comments to see if you agree. So Richard would say, if the nature of a thing cannot be explained in simplistic fashion, i.e., if you will, the original Twitter box, it's wrong. If the nature of a thing and things that are fundamentally important to how this reality works, how life itself operates, your role here. I'm not talking about everything, how to assemble a Mr. Coffee or I'm talking about the biggest, most important things in life. Say it like Richard. If the nature of that cannot be explained in the simplicity of the original Twitter box, it's wrong. I didn't say everything. If you order a real girl doll through the internet and Real Girl Doll shows up, there could be a whole series of instructions of how you're supposed to use her. She identifies as her, this particular Real Girl Doll. There could be all sorts of lubrications and juices and things that come with it. And not everything's going to fit in 140 characters, but the most important things in life will. In fact, the Not Milk system gives itself away by doing just the opposite. I think just like the example with the Stephen Hawking math. If you want to talk about this, or you want to dabble in this area, or have a seat at this table, you need to have the conversation at a very highly complicated level, which the example we used earlier was the math. But there's a lot of examples where the Not Milk system creates a barrier to entry, which is very similar to Zane's email from a few days back, where every single part of society and culture is artificially made complicated. I think Zane's email was more about you need a huge infrastructure to get involved in it, or you need to do your experiments in space. You can't do that, can you? So you can't do those experiments. You little people, you great unwashed proletariats and plebes have nothing to offer. Smart people that have the billion-dollar infrastructure and resources, that people that have been able to pass the Transor Z and the Optimus Prime math tests, these people are in charge. You just sit back and put your seat back and ask for your peanuts and popcorn and let the smart people be in control. That's certainly what happened over the last 2.5 years. And what did the zombified masses do? They said, smart people are in control, and I'm going to do as I'm told. Okay, new segment, Stalled Century Update. And this is a big one. Stalled Century Update. That's like a bright boy alert. So just 2 days ago, I'm flipping by some channels and I went, oh no, it's Jay Leno's back. And guys, here's the deal. To me, it's absolutely stalled century. I don't believe, I watched just 5 minutes ago. It wasn't exactly cringeworthy, but almost. The set looked cheap. Jay Leno game show. You Bet Your Life. How about that for a title? You Bet Your Life. Now, could I assess exactly what was going on I don't know, maybe it wasn't even 5 minutes I watched, but he looked, sorry Jay, he looked old, he looked tired, he looked like he didn't want to be there. But again, I don't have a huge sample size. Maybe he's really on his game and really upbeat and chipper in all the other episodes, and I just watched not even 5 minutes of one episode. But to me, it just screamed stalled century. And what that means, essentially, especially with a name for a game show like You Bet Your Life, is they need it. They need to recycle him back for their stalled century magic. What exactly that means, I don't even have a good clue as to what exactly that means. But we'll definitely dive into it in more detail some other time. I just want to do this quick segment about, without a doubt, another stalled century moment. Jay Leno, 2009, he left The Tonight Show. Matt, he needs the money. No, he doesn't. He's worth they estimate 400 to 700 million, and his car collection, his antique car collection by itself, is $50 to $100 million. He's been collecting antique cars for 35 to 40 years, and everybody knows what that sort of investment has gone up and where that has gone to, considering the inflation and everything that is artificial is inflating, and everybody wants real things that you can drop on your foot. They don't want gold in some ETF. They want a gold bar you can drop on your foot. Like that guy said in that one of those Batman movies, he says, I don't care if this exchange is being robbed. I've got my money under the mattress. Yeah, exactly. So Jay Leno owns the most incredible assets anybody could own, antique vintage cars. He doesn't need the money. And then everybody will come with their tired excuses and the same old thing. Well, Matt, you know, they can never leave the limelight. They crave it. No, I didn't get that sense at all. I got the sense this is absolutely not milk dictated. It is a stalled century bright boy alert. Matt, You Bet Your Life is like a tired old game show, and they needed the star power of Jay Leno to attract Jay Leno's fans and existing audience back into it. They'll watch it just for Jay Leno. I understand the business 101 of it. Okay, if there was real business intention, it wasn't part of stalled century magic. But all of that you can throw out if you just go back, like we love to do now. It all breaks down if you just go back to the initial conversation, the first day in the smoking room, that the big event the big 2001 job application? Who's the first person that put their hand up and said, I know what we can do in Lower Manhattan? Oh, tell us. It all breaks down. Who's the person? Who's the first person with these ideas? So it breaks down when you go back to where the tributary of the river starts. The first call into Jay Leno or his manager. Now, Jay's in his early 70s. Sitting on $500 million. And it's not like he craves the attention. You don't think he can go to any party in the Hollywood Hills or Beverly Hills he wants to. You don't think he can go to any event he wants to, the Oscars, whatever. And when he goes in, people aren't going to fawn all over him. And the reporters, it's not about attention. You don't think he can get attention walking around Los Angeles, Jay Leno, going to every party, every event, doing whatever he wants to do? Come on. It's not about attention. So back to what was being said, Jay Leno and wherever his mansion is in the Hollywood Hills or Beverly Hills, I assume he's been in around the Los Angeles era forever. So he's probably still in Los Angeles. So he gets a call, or his manager, Jay, I know you're in your early 70s and you're very comfortable and set in your ways, as most people in their 70s are. They kind of want to be left alone if they're real people. Well, Matt, that's where you're making your biggest mistake. Okay, we'll talk about that if we have time. But Jay, will you come back and host You Bet Your Life? We can pay you $100,000 an episode, in which it's such a 2-bit lame-ass game show that's picked up almost like in Syndicate. It's not some mega game show that they're putting in prime time. It's like on these weird channels. They probably couldn't pay him that much, and it doesn't matter. He has more than enough money. So he's sitting in his beautiful sunroom in the Hollywood Hills, and he's reading his magazine, which he likes, Auto Trader magazine, or what the classic car, how to rebuild an engine, or whatever a 70-year-old likes to do. Oh, yeah, I'd love to come back and be a host of some 2-bit game show. Do you think the studio's just right next door? He's not going to have to drive 50 minutes or get in a limo and go an hour and 20 minutes across Los Angeles in traffic to get to the studio every day. I mean, come on. Nobody would do it unless they have to do it. That's the principle of Stalled Century. In any real world, the phone call comes in, Jay's sitting on $500 million, the sun's coming through the beautiful room and the beautiful furniture, and then he sees the pool and the hot tub and the beautiful Hollywood Hills. Jay, do you want to come back and host in your 70s, and you're going to have to commute across Los Angeles or down, the studio's down in Orange? He would say, you know what, thanks for thinking of me, but no thank you. I don't think I'll do that. That's not how Stalled Century works, though, does it? Jay said, no thanks. Who's asking me to do it? I have to do it? Now, I don't think, look, how this works, we don't know. Do I think Men in Black came in and said, Jay, you have to do it? I don't know how this works. What is the process how Not Milk Reality facilitates Stalled Century? Why does Warren Buffett never leave his job? Why do we just know deep down that Zuck the Borg will never, ever go away? Why do these things keep happening? Any normal person just goes off and retires. So all we do, and I do it myself because there's not a whole lot else we can do. We just open up the same toy box and say, oh, this toy is being handed to me by the hand of Thing. They want to retire, but the Men in Black come in and say, you made a deal and you can't. That's all we can come up with over and over. And, so what? But there's a mechanism here at work that obviously a lot of things at work here that we don't understand. That's okay. Noticing it's an artificial Stalled Century, noticing the not know tactics is enough. Who really convinced Jay Leno? He would think you're crazy probably if you interviewed him. Well, Jay, what if you saw him on the street walking along the seedy part of Hollywood Boulevard? Hey, Jay, who made you come back? What? Who made you come back and do? You don't want to do that show. I know. He would probably look over and think you're crazy and say, of course it was my decision to come back. What are you talking about? But but this is crazy to people stumbling upon this video. Who would be right? Deep down, what does your inner knowing say? Even if he says and believes in every fiber in his maybe NPC being that he made the decision himself to come back. Did he really? It happens too much. There's too many things stalled across the board. There's too many people like Vanna White that don't ever go anywhere. They don't ever go away. Actually, one of the last people I can think of that kind of did retire and just go away like any normal person would was The Tonight Show's Johnny Carson, roughly, I don't know, 30 years ago. But the world was a different place. I think the Not Milk, in its reach and its tactics, its ability, it's gained more control, unfortunately. It has. The world was a different place. I'm in my early 50s, and I tell you, the world is changed, whether that be a literal metaphysical change that happened on the big day in 2001, a shift, it doesn't matter. Johnny Carson, for whatever reason, 35 years ago, he left The Tonight Show, and he was gone. He didn't show up. Whatever that. Maybe there's reasons for that. Maybe he had mental issues. It doesn't matter. The fact it still remains. He left. He was loved, his final episode, and then he was gone. He didn't have constant cameos on this TV show and come back and do this movie. He just went away. And that's like the last one I can think of 35 years ago. Maybe he was able to do that. The world was a metaphysically different place back then. If anybody's coming forward and saying, well, Matt, you kind of leaked it out quickly. You said NPC, or you could make it a more, simpler discussion. You could say the fact that all these people that get under the dragon's wing, they're recycled back time and time again. They never truly go away. They never truly retire, all part of the whatever stalled century magic they're trying to accomplish. It tells you at the base level, Matt, that these people are not the same as you and me. Whether you call them an NPC or Tony's sequential incarnation, they're not the same, which probably means at the root level, spiritually, they're not the same as you and I, like the pure definition of alien. Not that they're from the Pleiades or whatever, but alien in that it's foreign and not the same as you and I. Maybe they never would ever put anybody like you and I into under the dragon's wing. Whether many real people, of course, most real people are still fooled by this society and want to get closer to the Not Milk and want to get closer to Carol Ann's closet, but maybe they'll never put a real person into a real famous position like Under the Dragon's Wing, because a real person has the ability to wake up potentially at any time. So maybe it is only the Vanna White types that would be given a role where they can just do the same thing decade after decade and help the stalled century magic, or a Jay Leno. As nice as he seems, I know people that have met him in Los Angeles and nothing bad about him. He's one of these stars that's actually very personable and he has a good reputation. Let's just say the exact opposite of Alec Baldwin and how he would be considered. But at the basic level in this conversation, and we'll probably never truly understand it, so it's best to put it simply, that these people that can never leave the dragon's wing, in some way they're not the same as you and me. I believe that. Again, there's a lot of ways or things we can talk about there. Were they always wooden Pinocchio? Were they real boy Pinocchio that gave themselves away and became wooden Pinocchio? Were they a different incarnation or entity? Do they have a different set of chromosomes like the royal family? Whatever it may be, we're never going to know the details. It's best just to back up and say, these, we'll just call them people, are not the same as you and me. And that more means spiritually, and the parts potentially that aren't here, not just the body. I'm not talking about the body at all. Quick segment on this before moving on. She dreams in color, she dreams in red. PA elected Fetterman. Somebody put the words to Better Man. I guess it's Pearl Jam Better Man, and set it to Fetterman. And I just had to do that. Thanks that was a great comment. And I wasn't real clear before, guys. This is when he was in the debate against anybody overseas. Was named John Fetterman, was elected to United States Senate by the state of Pennsylvania over Dr. Oz. But there were times during the debate when he couldn't. When I said he can't put a sentence together, I'm telling you it was literal. He couldn't speak. If he said, "Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?" the audience would say no, because there's nothing coming out of your mouth. He just... Any first grade debating club could clean his clock. Now, guys, we should be very unfortunate that this happened, okay? Because it's not legitimate. None of it's legitimate. So if a gigantic clown show, Mr. Fetterman, Mr. Smith goes to Washington, if it becomes, and let's just say everything they say about his condition is completely legitimate. It's not a pause, Monday Night Football, OJ and Giffords. He doesn't blab or a blabby. It's not that. Say it's real. Either way, it's going to be a lot of fun for us. A quick reminder about the term conspiracy theorist. As I've mentioned before, the basic and most simple definition of conspiracy theorist is simply one that chooses to think for themselves instead of looking to very respected and esteemed individuals like Don Lemon and Anderson Cooper for their answers. And there's a lot of different ways this can be applied outside of the truth subjects that we typically talk about. Here's one you've probably never thought about, but you'll go, that's right. More people haven't thought about this. You know what the dirtiest item of all time is? A belt. A man's belt. Think about it, man. Think. Nobody talks about this. Why? A man may have a belt for 15 or 20 years, and it's never washed. Now, the man goes out to the mall. We'll use them. Women have belts too, but it's much simpler. A big cowboy belt buckle. Could you imagine what's living and breeding on the belt buckle like a petri dish times a million? Man goes out to the mall, interacts with this person, no social distancing, shakes hands here, does this. Person sneezes all over their hot dog, all over their hand. And then, they might not be able to wash their hands out at the mall or rustling up cattle or whatever. But then what do? They go into honey, I have to use the restroom. They go, and the first thing they do is touch the belt. But from what the man has done all day long, the hands, they haven't been washed for many hours. They collected all sorts of bacteria, 40 million different types of bacteria and fungus and parasites or whatever it may be. 25 truck stops the person's been, and then they go to the belt and they put everything they collected up on their hands onto the belt. Now the horror doesn't just end there. The belt has been a collector of these sorts of fungi, bacteria, and parasites for the past 15 to 20 years because it's never been cleaned. So then the belt and that petri dish amplifies it. Then what do? The hands go right down to the pee-pee. The hands go right down onto the pee-pee. And then after the pee-pee, that's not supposed to be a sanitary act based on what society and culture tells us. Then the hands go back to the belt. And it's a constant recycle of the world to the fungus of the world to the belt to the pee-pee, what's on the pee-pee back to the belt. Can you imagine what is living and breeding on the belt? And it's never been washed. Think about it, man. Have you ever seen a relative taking out the Clorox wipes and wiping down the buckle? Never, man. You know what proves more than anything else that life on Earth did not come to be haphazardly or spontaneously? They call it scientific term spontaneogenesis, or whatever the Stephen Hawking types will tell you about. This lightning bolt hit this pool of goo and amino acids jumped on the backs of one another and started humping away like monkeys in Madagascar. You know what proves all that's bullcrap? The belt. Compare the average man's belt, or think of one of these gigantic, obnoxious cowboy belt buckles. Compare that to life as they say it was on Earth before the Cretaceous period, or whatever these dumbass period where there's nothing going on but lightning bolts and toxic, noxious gases and shit. Oh, life formed there, right? But if it formed there, what I'm saying is it would form on people's belts. All the shit people collect up, introduced things from all over the world, and food items and amino acids, and somebody sneezes all over their hand and then they go to the belt, and they're holding a hot dog, that's amino acids, and they go to the belt, and it's all collected up on the belt. Everything that's introduced, all different types of fungi and all different types of bacteria, things that are already alive. The belt should basically, if what science says about how life formed on, quote, planet Earth, your belt should basically come to life with all the shit you've put on it. It should start talking to you one day in the restroom. You touch your pee-pee. Hi, Matt. What the hell was that? Who's talking to me? I'm your belt. Maybe that's going a little too far, but remember the original theme of this segment. The conspiracy theorist thinks differently. The conspiracy theorist now might consider washing one's hands before going to the bathroom. That makes more sense, doesn't it? To wash, you're out all day long, then you wash up before touching the PP. Everything in this reality is half-assed backwards. It makes a million times more sense to wash up before going the bathroom, not after. It would break the nasty belt propagation of filth cycle. How the heck did we get on this topic? It's just like that scene in Lethal Weapon. That quantum of conscious, he's gone, man. He's out there like Pluto. Joshua, talk to Joshua. Guys, yeah, it is a little absurd, but the root of the last segment is absolutely accurate. And it's about thinking differently. I've been thinking about this for years. How come nobody makes an issue with how disgusting everybody's belt is? I struggle with this shit. I think differently. All right, last segment. Let's talk about something that is extremely interesting to people that listen to channels like this. A reality that has somehow morphed into what I'm leaving on the table as the new term. Here's another term, a modified solipsism, potentially. A modified solipsism. Now, I wouldn't have given any weight to this possibility years ago, and I'm not quite on board yet, and I'm not truly at the level of not circumcision, solipsism. Okay, I know a lot of people don't understand what that is. We'll start with the basics. This will evolve into a discussion on a modified solipsism where there might not be very many real people here. Okay, let's go right to the heart of it. A very, very small number of real people, potentially, based on, some sort of reality netherworld we were shifted to for whatever reason. We'll go there as much as possible in this last segment. So let's start with the basics. Solipsism is the philosophical notion that because only you know you exist, cogito ergo sum, I watch the Oprah network, therefore I am. I mean, only you know that you exist. So there is no evidence, there's nothing can be proven that quantum of conscience, Matt exists, your best friend exists. It potentially could be only you. Now, there's a lot of reasons I think that's ridiculous. Okay, I don't ever go into pure solipsism. But something happened to reality itself, and it could have been what I talked about a week or two ago. The tree accident potentially did kill me. I emerged into a reality that mimics my old reality, but is, I would, for lack of a better term, at a lower level. It's an imitation, but one that breaks down and has devolved and is some sort of a clown show, really bad artificial imitation of the old reality, because I was killed in the tree accident or whatever it may be. I told you a few weeks back or a week back, I don't put all my chips there, but there could have been a reality shift in and of itself without me or anyone else having to die. This reality is not what existed for me in the 70s and 80s. Things here are fundamentally or metaphysically different in terms of its absolute need to appear to us to be a clown show. So the term I'm throwing out here, modified solipsism, I don't even think I'm using those words correctly. I don't think I'll keep using the term past this presentation, just in a way of talking about something, a hybrid solipsism. We'll come up with a better term. The whole point is, my belief today is there potentially are a whole lot less real people here in this reality with me today, like the people listening to the sound of my voice, than I would have ever believed possible, say 5 years ago. I don't know why keep moving towards this. I guess I just can't understand how, again, the reality needs to present the clown show. It needs to. It is the function of the reality in some way to actually wake people up. In my opinion, whether the creeps are aware of it or not, they serve a function much greater than themselves, where they themselves, I don't even think, understand their true role, where they participate in actually a gigantic wake-up process for real people like us. As much as we are getting screwed over, if you back up far enough and look back at it, all the negative elements in this reality actually, at the end of the day, if we are true immortal spiritual beings, they serve us. Okay, they serve us in some way because we have benefited from all of this craziness tremendously. As difficult as it has been on all of us, where it counts most, we have already benefited tremendously. And what I was saying was, I never completed my thought. The reason I'm going as far as I'm going on this, or at least leaving it on the table, is, we've been complaining for how many years now? I can't wake up, Tony. I can't wake up any. Okay, but we never thought it could get to this level of absurdity. We thought, if you would have come to me, 5 years ago, I was saying, you can't wake people up, don't bother, whatever. Before that, I was absolutely trying to wake people up. We all thought we could. About 5 years ago, I started to come around. Not to the degree I should have. I still to this day try to every once in a while to make a video that might wake up somebody. But, we came around to the fact that people aren't going to come around. My friend Tony's not going to wake up. But when we came up with that notion, or that we came to that understanding, we never thought it could get this crazy, this bizarre. And this is what I struggle with. It's so ridiculous, the reality presented to us. It's so insane across the board. Even 3 years ago, I couldn't ever imagine we would be where we are today. I would think for this clown show not to rub off on my friend Tony or on my relatives and cousins on the Ship of Fools, they cannot possibly be the same as me. That is where I'm going with this, if this is making any sense. It's not easy to talk about. And again, I don't want anybody to come away from this presentation and be like, Matt, here's where he is today. He's at modified solipsism. No, I'm just leaving it on the table. That's not what I wouldn't push all my chips there. I know I use that analogy a lot. It's just something to be discussed. That's a possibility that needs to be left on the table. A lot of things are on the table right now. I'm not sure any one has a big lead over any of the others. But the reality is broken down to such a ridiculous degree where I'm like, how could Tony, my friend Tony, be the same Tony that I remember in my past reality? How could he be real? And that doesn't necessarily mean NPC either. When I say not real, it's just because I have no other way to talk about it. It doesn't necessarily mean NPC. In the past, I've talked about somebody giving themselves away or choosing to go deeper and deeper into the dragon's wing. A real boy or girl Pinocchio, per the choices they make here and what they believe in, basically becoming a wooden Pinocchio that then is on the frequency or the radio station or the download and does everything that the broadcast over the loudspeaker of the Ship of Fools tells them to do. I guess, is that still a real person? I don't know how to describe it, but it doesn't necessarily mean complete background character. If somebody went real boy Pinocchio, real girl Pinocchio back into wood, that's what, in a sense, the whole reality tries to do to people. And then whatever a speaker announcement comes over the loudspeaker on the Ship of Fools and the Pacific Princess, the people just perk up like they're getting a download and go along with whatever Captain Steubing is telling them to do. We've been following Vicky's instructions and Isaac's instructions on the Pacific Princess. Is that still a real person? So I guess if you expand that definition of real person, it is a modified solipsism. There aren't many real people left here. I guess that's the simplest way of putting it. And let me talk about this further using my favorite example right now. One of my biggest frustrations, we all have our little idiosyncrasies or things that we're interested in and maybe we shouldn't be. I spend too much time looking at these YouTube movie reviewers, not because I want to see how they reviewed Rings of Power, just because it's so fascinating to me how they all say the same things over and over again for 10 years without seeing the trend, the bigger picture of what's going on here with reality itself. So I'm at the point now where I'm going, these people couldn't possibly be real people to be saying the same things over and over again. I just watched another one this morning. And guys, give me 2 minutes or less on this. In case anybody's new, you know where I'm going, but it is incredible to me. They all have come forth since, say, Star Wars The Force Awakens. And since then, there are probably tens of thousands of videos, and they all say the same thing, like every time. The writers hate the fans. The writers don't love the source material, and they destroy the original canon or true intention of what the old films, the old Star Wars, or the old Witcher, or the old She-Hulk, or the old comic books. They hate the fans. The writers mock the fans. The writers don't like the source material. They got bad writers. It's all about they're only trying to push woke and social justice warrior agendas, and that's why they do it. And the executive group is out of touch, and it's the same excuses over and over. And I could see for a year or two, and they don't see reality the way we see it. Matt, you expect these people to see what you and I do? No. But what if it's 50 years from now, and they're still destroying every franchise that's still left, and they're still putting in the same woke themes, and they're still dropping articles and hints that the executive group and the writers were caught a live mic. This is the way it's kind of presented, not like a live mic, but it's leaked that they were talking bad about the fans. Like, that might happen once. If it's happened now 150 times, where the writers, or now this term just came out of nowhere, like a Mandela effect. Now everything, it's showrunners. The showrunners of She-Hulk, where did that term come from? But whatever. They hate the fans. And what if it's 50 more years and it's this? Are they still going to be making the same videos? And it's been so long where I'm going, these people can't be real. Now, that doesn't mean what it sounds like to it. It just, if you were a real boy Pinocchio, girl Pinocchio, and you were completely of wood, literally just standing in the middle of the ship of fools, waiting for the next announcement to come over the loudspeakers to tell you what to do, then I don't have any other way of putting it, then you're not a real person. That person's been lost to the reality, at least that aspect of themselves. Many of us would like to think there's still a spiritual aspect of themselves that's not here, that has preserved itself, and only stuck its small pinky finger into the icy river. And if it stuck the finger in for too long and it has to have the finger chopped off, well, it's still intact to a degree. A lot of smart people believe we're just a small aspect of a larger spiritual being that's here or agreed to come here or is put here. But it's not the right terminology, but I'm just saying that these people can't be real. For my cousins or my friends to not notice certain things, and they can't be real, or they've given themselves away. And I know I'm going round and round, but you try talking about this. And as I've said millions of times, the reality itself gives itself away like a Mandela effect. Because to us, it is absolute clown show, but it's just never going far enough where we can kind of understand to a degree why my friend Tony never comes around to it, or your cousin never comes around to it. And the example I used way back when, using President Biden and how he would make a speech, I can't say because that caused a problem for me, but a similar one would be, John Fetterman, he comes out and whatever they said happened to him medically, he can't, many times he stumbles over in the debate, can't even put a sentence together or can't respond at all. And it's just within the confines of normalcy where my friend Tony would say, well, Matt, I guess in the past he would never be elected. But see, the way that politics works today, Matt, it's all ideology driven. They could have put up just an old shoe as the Democrat candidate. And as long as that old shoe would fight for abortion rights and do whatever the Democrat platform demands, it doesn't matter whether he can form a sentence or not. It's completely broken down to us, but it's just within that degree of normalcy. This is very much like a Mandela effect, where it's very subtle. And I'm not going to turn this into a Mandela effect video, and there's no reason to comment, I told you that was a psyop. It's not the point here. Just using as an example. It's always so subtle. Even Australia moving 1,000 miles is like, did I really, see that right? Looking at that map, in first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, or you doubt yourself a little bit. It's just the way the reality plays its games. For example, you'll never wake up one day with a Mandela effect and his name on the A team, his name is Mr. F or Mr. Z, Mr. T. I mean, it's never going to be that blatant, although we all have our anchor effect. So reality works the same way. John Fetterman being elected when in many parts of the debate he couldn't form a sentence, it makes sense to Tony. And Matt, it's ideologically driven. It doesn't matter the man. And it never goes past what the normies will use or be able to explain it away as still normal on the ship of fools. I think I might have used the example, what if Fetterman just came out, ripped his shirt off, and just started rolling around on the floor? Well, that would be, going too far. He couldn't, if any sort of a real election system, I'm not going to get into that either. My thoughts on that, I can't do a sidebar every time. He couldn't possibly be elected if he just was rolling around on the floor next to Dr. Oz with no shirt off. It never gives us that. We never get that win. It's crazy to us based and compared to the old reality that we remember. But it's never enough like that. It never crosses that line where we would say, my friend Tony has to see this, or my cousins have to come around to this. And because the reality plays its same subtle game over and over, even with the craziness, when my friend Tony, I say my Tony, so my friend Tony would come forth and say, Matt, the school system has been inundated by the hardcore liberals, which is basically a modern day communism and how radical their beliefs. So there's always a reason where they can explain it away, where we think it has crossed the line. To them, it has not crossed the line, and we can kind of see why to them it hasn't crossed the line. No real world could play this game over and over and over again. Okay, no real world could do this. So in many ways, in this regard, I agree a lot with what Chiron's Last comes and puts forth. Chiron's Last, I don't know, he puts a video out every month or so. I agree with a lot of it, okay? Not every bit of it, but a lot of it. Basically, the theme of his videos is you have to do everything possible at basically every second of the day to work as hard as you can for whatever time you have left to separate yourself from every aspect of this reality. And I agree with that to a degree. We are about separating from it. If your higher self has a piece of you in this reality, and it might be as simple as, can we teach that part of ourselves to literally see the ridiculousness of it and walk away from it? Because higher self might say, I don't want to take back a piece of me that is in any way allured or wanting what that reality has to offer. Just simply, I'll keep putting it back in the reality over and over and over again until it learns its lessons. And Chiron's Last has that theme, and he seems to be saying, even if it leads to your destruction and demise, there's no, you can't possibly go far enough in trying to separate from it, I believe is what he's saying. Now, I would say, if you heard his last video about a month ago, if you're going to take that sort of passionate approach, saying how everybody, even if it leads to your own demise and destruction, and worse than that, I don't know what I can say here. I've had I don't want to run any problems here in loading this video. Then I think he needs to address, then who's the judge of how far is enough? He doesn't mention that. Who's the judge? That implies a judge. If there's some metric, you have to detach from every aspect of this reality. Well, who's the judge? Even if it's your own self or your own higher self, he doesn't mention it at all. Well, I don't see how you can be so passionate and say you have to separate in every way from every bit of these reality tentacles without, well, how do you know you've gone far enough? Who's ultimately going to judge that? Do you judge yourself, or is there a metaphysical ruler of some kind? He needs to at least address it. Doesn't ever mention it. Anyway, I agree with most of what he presents in those videos. A huge part, or 98% of what we are to do here, maybe like 90%, there's still things we need to do for ourselves, like me overcoming the rooster down the road and all the personal things and all the work we still have to do here. But a big part of it is separating from the reality. And that starts with, of course, not coveting the red carpet and not chasing its rewards. And that's first grade stuff. I don't know who the judge would be at the end of the day on this, whether it's you judging yourself or whatever your religious beliefs are. But if you are coveting the rewards and what this society puts out as the metrics for success, and if you are in any way attached to this place, then at the very best case scenario, I think people are going to have to do it all over again. It is absolutely about seeing how ridiculous this is and moving away from it and separating from it as much as possible. Thanks for listening.